22 minutes before the hour. Thanks so much for being with us. Miller and Moulton, the Florida Sports Network, the Florida Sports Network. Seth Everett will join us at the top of the hour. We'll head to New York in an hour to talk the Giants and Joe Judge with Ryan Dunleavy. We'll head to Chicago at the top of the 9 o'clock hour, talk with Patrick Finley, and then we'll talk to Ryan Curley. It's gotten some sleep, hopefully, after the Dogs won their first national title in over 40 years. Dave Hyde's kind enough to join us once again. Outstanding columnist for the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Hyde Sports. Dave Hyde Sports. Dave, it's David and Mark. Thanks for your time once again. How are you?
Doing well. How's everything there?
Well,
sounds like you guys got the markets cornered on all the openings in the NFL right now. Your guess?
Yes, but we never thought we'd be talking to you. What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
Yeah, I think that was a shocker to most of us. I wrote a column after Sunday's game saying, "Okay, Steve Ross's decision now. What's he want to do? Does he want to fire, keep, change, whatever?" And I was a little surprised if they were going to fire somebody, I thought it'd be the general manager, Chris Greer, and if he goes, then I thought, there's a chance the coach goes, they just clean house. But I'm a little surprised that it was Flores alone.
As were we, and it certainly seems, Dave, that a lot of this is that, like the report card that I would get in kindergarten that says doesn't work and play well with others seems to be the biggest problem Flores had. He had back-to-back winning seasons. To me, working and playing well with others should be on the others if you have back-to-back winning seasons, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are lines with it. I don't, the communication and, collaboration idea that he was fired for. Look, if you're the owner, it should be about winning. Okay, does this make you a better team? Does a better organization? Are you and that's the surprising part to me. Make it about football. If you want to fire him for his lack of building an offensive staff and that, it was well known Brian Flores doesn't get along with people. I mean, he's 4 days into his first practice, he fired his offensive line coach. Okay, there's Minka Fitzpatrick. He didn't get along with him and traded an all-pro safety to Pittsburgh. So he has issues in that regard. Were they fireable issues? That's the thing to me. That is a little bit when you look, his teams were playing hard for him. You get a first-time coach. There's a learning curve there. And the question is going into year 4, would they have been better with him? And again, if they were going to fire somebody, I thought it'd be the general manager, because the quarterback decision is really the thing that's setting back this franchise.
Dave, I'm curious about the premise, even. If you go back to your first answer in which you said you wrote a column after Sunday saying, well, what direction is he going to go? I got to be honest. I didn't think that there was any other direction that they were going to go except keep moving forward. I mean, that's how surprising this is to me. And it seems as if the fan base, at least as best we can tell, they're really honked off by this. Do you think this has caught the Dolphins and Stephen Ross by surprise, just how much people are questioning what they're doing?
No, I think they knew they were making a public relations, a mess. And you do something like that, and people are going to say, "Whoa, wait a second. They were tanking the first season." Here's the thing: if they want communication and collaboration, the issue was before they hired Flores. They knew they were getting who they were getting. I mean, a Bill Belichick, not just the church of Belichick for 15 years from his young coach. So that's his role model. If you don't want that type of guy, don't hire him. What's more, if the whole blueprint at that time was the tank. They hate that word tanking. Then you can come up with something else that sounded that. But that was the concept. They traded people overboard. They got draft picks. They were going to find their franchise quarterback by getting to the top of the draft. And instead, they bring in a guy who refused to tank. The coach, Flores, refused to tank. And so right off the bat, how could they hire a guy raised by Belichick, and he's got rough edges if he's coming out of that, and they didn't talk to him about tanking, or he didn't agree to it. And so they want to talk communication. It's on their side of hiring the wrong guy. So, I go down to Steve Ross, who he's hired, GM, coaches. He hasn't got it right in 13. As a Dolphin, somebody writes about him and prefers to write about excellence rather than mediocrity or worse. I hope he gets it right this time.
Well, and Dave, there's not much reason to think that he will. I mean, Dave Wannstedt was the last head coach hired by the Dolphins who had coaching experience. And I used to not like the retread coaches. I used to think that was the bad move. But at some point, hiring another assistant seems to be the same method that has not worked for the entire time that Stephen Ross has owned this team. And it looks as if when they fired Brian Flores, there was a lot of, okay, they've already got someone in waiting. This is just the same old plan, Dave. It looks like they're doing this all over again.
Yeah, we're on some level back to square one, especially if you consider the defense he's put together was his defense. It was he handpicked players to play a defense he likes, and that's the New England defense. And look, good players are good players. I get that, but some are system players, and and so the question will be what do they bring in here, and what does he want to do? And look, for instance, systems. Zach Thomas and John Offerdahl both were linebackers, great linemen in NFL, but they were both undersized. Zach played in a 4-3 defense behind two huge defensive tackles, and had a great career, going to the Hall of Fame. John Offerdahl played in a 3-4 defense behind, a nose guard, and took on 300-pound linebacker guards every play, and had a shortened career to injury. So you got to know what players you have. You got to know what system you're going to run. And Brian Flores had that up and running with the defense. And now you're going to bring in another guy, and we'll see how that all fits with the players he has here.
Talking with Dave Hyde, outstanding columnist for the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Hyde Sports. That's Dave Hyde Sports. What is also surprising to us, Dave, is we figured when Flores was let go, well, then obviously they've got a plan. I mean, whether it was going to be Jim Harbaugh, which we thought it was, or somebody else, Jim Caldwell, Peterson. I mean, clearly they know exactly what they want here. They're not going to waste a lot of time. 48, 72 hours, this sucker's going to be done. And then the first thing we hear is that, well, they want to talk to Dan Quinn and Brian Daboll. And it's like, well, they're starting from scratch like everybody else. I mean, isn't that also surprising here? I mean, he had to make this decision. Once they lost to Tennessee and they weren't going to the playoffs, that Ross said, well, okay, now I can fire him. So, I mean, he knew for a week what he was doing.
Well, yeah, but also there's NFL protocol. They can't hire somebody that quickly and pretend they're following the Rooney Rule. So, there's timeline's interesting here because I keep hearing Harbaugh, even though Ross shot it down for the most part in his press conference, and somebody close to Ross told me, no, it's not going to happen. So, but I keep hearing that. So until, I don't know what to say about that rumor. Other than they are going to have, they're going to have, I'm not going to Alabama questions like Nick Saban if they hire him. but on some level, they have to go through the procedure of hiring the right coach. And I'll be honest, I don't think they had somebody in mind that if it's not Harbaugh, there's if they want to get a coach to help their current quarterback, they get Brian Dable, who was his coach at Alabama for a year. If they want to fix the offensive line, get Mike Munchak, who is now free from Denver. If you want to help, get your defense, make sure that's set up, you get, there's like 3 or 4 coordinators. So I'm curious which way they go. I agree with you. Probably would prefer a veteran, somebody who's had a head coaching try and failed for some reason. But, until you've been in those interview rooms and know these coaches, and none of us do, it's hard to really say who they should get.
Dave, appreciate your time and your insight. Be safe, be well. Hopefully we can talk again.
Yep, thanks.
Dave Hyde, columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Hyde Sports. That's Dave Hyde, HYDE Sports. And he sent a tweet out, Mark, right before he did our interview, in which he said, if you're prioritizing the quarterback, it's Brian Daboll. You want to fix the O-line, Mike Munchak. You want to replenish the defense, Dan Quinn, Todd Bowles, Vance Joseph. You want to infuriate the fan base, fill in the blank.
Oh, I think every name on that list that's not Dan Quinn will infuriate the fan base.
Remember, Bowles was interim coach for the Dolphins once before.
Okay. I'm just saying, if they hire another assistant, lifer assistant, interim head coach guy, the fan base will be infuriated. In fact, I think they're infuriated if it's anybody not named Harbaugh. I don't even care if it's Quinn or it's Caldwell or whatever the case may be. They seem to like this guy. They thought he was doing a good job. We thought he was doing a good job.
And our bias is we have been difficult to deal with in our careers. And we have been in situations where we have created the friction, where others around us have created the friction. And we have always felt that we can work through it.
And it's a dadgum good point, David, because as we've been bounced around, we've been able to come back and basically prove ourselves right over and over again, despite being difficult to get along with from time to time.
Right. Right. I mean, and we would look at our bosses and go, listen, we know we're a handful. We do a pretty good show.
Right.
All right. The results are pretty good.
Flores back-to-back winning records.
Yeah,
I know I'm a blankety blank, but I did just win 9 games with that offensive line that he drafted.
Right. And so it's another reason why Miller and Moulton are on the side of Flores here. All right. We can look at him and go, we're more like you than the GM.
And I think the other thing is that we have thick enough skin to work with people that we don't necessarily get along with, but we know that they're good.
Right.
We can look at one another and go, I don't know if I necessarily like you all that much, but I know you're good at what you do and you're going to make me better at what I do.
Right.
So we're going to move forward with this.
But there are a lot of people in this world who do not like conflict.
And more every day.
Yes. And will avoid people and or get rid of people because there is conflict. And yes, in an ideal world, there would not be conflict. There would not be creative differences, as they say. But I think this is a staggering mistake by Ross. Staggering. And that, I'm sorry, you be a leader.
You're jeopardizing the rest of the decade, David.
Yes.
You really and truly are here.
And in your case, you're like 81 years old. I mean, you've just, unless you absolutely get this right, I mean, you have probably ruined your franchise for the rest of your life. I mean, that's how big of a decision he just made here. I mean, are you sure about this? Brian Flores was that big of a blankety blank?
That you're blowing this all up.
Are you sure? And yeah, I mean, the offensive side of the ball was not working. We felt Tua and some others were doing the best they could with what they had. They clearly needed a new offensive line coach. Either that or a whole new line. Either the GM picked good players and they weren't being put in the right system and coached up, or he picked bad players and they got to go get new ones. Man.
And I thought Dave Hyde said it perfectly throughout the interview. They knew going in what they were getting with Brian Flores. They knew they were getting someone that was rough around the edges and not that easy to deal with.